What's up, YouTube? So, in this video, I'm going to be going over my thoughts for the Dolphins-Lions game. I've tried to do the film sessions this week. It's just not... It just hasn't happened. At first, it was computer issues. Basically, every time I was recording, my computer kept on crashing and then would corrupt the file. Each time I did it, I was recording like half-hour to hour-long videos, and then just for the file to get corrupted, it was very, very frustrating. I was staying up very late trying to re-record it, and no matter what I was doing, it just wasn't seeming to work. I recorded the offense 4 times, and eventually I gave up on trying to do offense. I tried to go to defense with some fresh eyes, and it happened twice with that. So 6 total videos from half-hour to hour long that got corrupted and I couldn't use. Very, very frustrating. I finally got my computer fixed. It's finally working properly. And then I tried to record last night and this morning, and now Game Pass, or NFL Plus, I guess, isn't working. So I'm just going to take the L and just kind of go over my thoughts, because I have watched the film many times now, trying to record this shit. So I do have my thoughts. I have some stuff for special teams, offense, defense, and some coaching things. I'll get into offense first. So, to start things off, I'm happy we got the win, 31-27. Should have beat the Lions a little bit more effectively than that. Start with Tua. Fantastic game from him. 29 for 36, 382 yards, 3 touchdowns. Should have been 4. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into that. My main thing from Mike McDaniel, and because he did have another learning moment. That goal line pass to Trent Sherfield should have been a touchdown, and he needed to challenge that. That is not up to the refs. They did make a bad call on the field, but I know it was supposed to be a scoring play, but that's not up to them to review that. Yes, all scoring plays are reviewed, but because it was on the field deemed not a touchdown, it won't get reviewed unless you challenge it. And it was not within 2 minutes, so Mike McDaniel should have and could have challenged that. So that's that. So Tua should have 4 touchdowns, and Trent Sherfield should have had 1. But I'm not going to harp on it too much. For one thing, we ended up getting the touchdown anyway a couple plays later from Alec Ingold, so it still was okay. But there is that. Tua as well had 5 carries for 19 yards rushing, and I did like that he slid. That was something I definitely liked. He also had the big run with the good block from Alec Ingold. Raheem Mostert had a pretty solid game, 14 carries, 64 yards, and he also had a catch for 3 yards. Nothing crazy there. Not super crazy numbers, but he had enough explosiveness for the Lions to have to respect it, and it was helping our play action and RPOs. Also, I think with Jeff Wilson added, I think it'll help a lot. He's not a super powerful guy, but he is he's about 215. So he does have a little bit of weight, and he's not afraid of 30 yards. He's not super powerful, but he's not afraid to get 30 yards and use his weight. And he's got really, really good vision. So I am happy to have him, and I think that'll help. Tyreek Hill had 12 catches on 14 targets, 188 yards. Fantastic fucking game from him. A lot of really, really tough catches that he came down with. Jalen Waddle, 8 catches for 106 yards, 2 touchdowns on 9 targets. I'll talk about his 2 touchdowns because they were both great. The first one was on the goal line. Trent Sherfield, this was great from him too. He ended up being double covered. He was covered by a linebacker and a DB on the left side. And he ended up doing basically a crossing route going to the right. And that pulled the linebacker and the DB with him. So that when Jalen Waddle came all the way across the field to his left, it was an easy throw for Tua because there was nobody there. The second one was a fantastically well-timed throw for Tua. When he threw it, Waddle was not open yet. He had to throw that with anticipation and timing, and he did it perfectly. Also, on that play, Tyreek Hill he went across the middle and pulled the safety with him so that when Waddle beat the corner, all Tua had to do was make a good throw, luckily, and he was able to do it. So fantastic there. Mike Gesicki, 3 catches, 38 yards, and a touchdown. And the Mike Gesicki touchdown was my favorite of the day. Mike McDaniel mentioned it in one of his interviews. I think it was the post-game interview, if I remember right. And it is true. Most of Tua's throws are just his first read. That helps Tua a lot. Helps our offensive line that isn't that good. And it just makes our offense move more efficiently. However, the Mike Gesicki touchdown, his first read was not open. And the offensive line actually did pretty well. And gave Tua time to actually decipher the field. And when he seen his first read wasn't there, he didn't panic. He did not panic. He went to his second read. His second read wasn't there. He went to his third read. His third read wasn't there. And then he got to his fourth, which was Mike Gesicki. And he got that ball out really accurately and got it into the end zone. That was my favorite touchdown from Tua today. Or period, actually. And the Alec Ingold touchdown, we ended up putting him in motion and did a little QB sneak with him, which is cool. Braylon Sanders, 2 catches, 17 yards on 2 targets. He did have the fumble. I am glad that we ended up going back to him and let him, get a catch and not fumble. I didn't want his only play to be a negative one, so I'm kind of glad that we did go back to him. Cedric Wilson, and I guess this is where we can transition to special teams, I guess. He had 2 punt returns for 24 yards, so he had a decent day in that regard, I guess. Didn't do anything offensively. He was out there a couple times, but we didn't throw it to him. He did some motion stuff. Jason Sanders had the 45-yard field goal, which is nice. Thomas Morstead had 1 punt for 38 yards, which was fine. Raheem Mostert had a kick return for 13 yards, whatever. The big thing for special teams is that fake punt that we gave up at the end of the second quarter. That is another learning moment from our special teams unit and the special teams coordinator. We need to be a little bit more aware of the fakes, especially in those situations. We were around the 40-50 range around midfield at the end of the second quarter, and it was 4th and 2, so they didn't have to go far. And they ended up running it with a fake punt, and they ended up gouging us and ended up getting a first down, which led to a field goal. I do want to see us do a little bit better than that. And I do realize that our special teams is being affected by the injuries we've had. A lot of our DBs are hurt. Most Dolphins fans are aware of this by now. We've had terrible luck with injuries this year. It just is what it is. And that means that people like a Justin Bethel, who are supposed to just be special teams players, are having to take a lot more snaps defensively. So those snaps on special teams, they're more tired than normal. He's just one example, but there are others too. So there's that. But I still want to improve on that. Across the board, something that needs to improve is penalties. And I'll talk about it offensively first. We cannot continue to shoot ourselves in the foot. We had 7 penalties for 55 yards, and that's just the ones that were accepted. The real number is much larger than that. These were just the penalties that Detroit accepted. If you watched my live stream, I was confused at the end of the game when I was looking at the box score and seeing that we only had 7 penalties. I was very confused by that because it seemed like we were getting a lot more, which we were. But the issue is that Detroit was declining a lot of them, just based on situations. But we were still committing them. Offense alone, I counted 8 penalties that the Lions declined when I was watching the film. Because like I said, I watched it 5 times because I was watching the film by myself first. So I counted 8 penalties that Detroit declined just on our offense alone. And then we had a couple on defense too. So that is something that we have to improve. We cannot continue to shoot ourselves in the foot. Tua keeps getting in situations where he's, you know, 2nd and 15, 3rd and 20, and just happen to make the perfect throw into tight-ass fucking windows and just hope it works out. And a lot of times it does, because Tua's been amazing this year, and it's worked out. But we cannot continue to shoot ourselves in the foot and force him to be in those situations so much. I'm glad it's worked, and it wasn't just against the Lions. This has been a continuous problem. And those were the types of things that Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater were not able to overcome as much. And that's not a slight to them. They're both solid quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater has had a solid NFL career and is a decent quarterback. Skylar Thompson is a very talented rookie. However, they're not able to overcome that much adversity like Tua has been able to. They're just not there in their careers at this moment. Teddy really never was. At least not to the consistency that Tua has had to do it. But there's going to come a time where we have to play Buffalo again, or some of these other tougher teams on our schedule, and we can't be shooting ourselves in the foot like we currently are. Like when we play against Buffalo, who's a really good defense and is only getting better by playing together, we can't be, 2nd and long, 3rd and long that many times in a row. We just can't do it. It's not the Lions' defense. It's not the same thing. The Lions' defense is the worst in the NFL. So we were able to convert those things. And we've done it throughout the year. We even did it against Buffalo. But I wouldn't make that the game plan. Penalties are definitely something that we have to improve on. And that is on defense too. And with that, I will get to the defense. In the first half, we gave up 27 points. That's way too much. The first half, we were unable to do a goddamn thing defensively. We couldn't get any pass rush. We couldn't tackle. We couldn't cover. And we were shooting ourselves in the foot constantly with penalties. And when our offense is struggling because we're getting penalties, but we're overcoming it, we can't be having our defense giving up 27 points. We just can't. The Lions do have a decent offense. They do have some decent playmakers, but a lot of that was us not doing our jobs efficiently. I'm going to be real with you. It was a lot more of what we were doing wrong than what they were doing right. And how I know this especially is because how different the second half looked. In the second half, because like I said, they scored 27 points on us in the first 2 quarters. The second half, they didn't score a thing. They didn't score a single point in the second half. And that's because we started tackling better than we were. I understand these guys are billionaires. These guys are millionaires too. They got good talent. They have T.J. Hawkinson. They just traded him to the Vikings, but whatever. They had him when they played against us. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Jamal Williams. They have DeAndre Swift. They got guys that are going to make plays. I understand that. But we have to do our job of covering and just making tackles. Like, we were once a really good tackling team a couple years ago, or even at the end of last year. And we need to get back to that. And once we started tackling better, we started covering better. We weren't getting a lot of pass rush, but we were kind of generating some kind of force. Zach Sealer did end up getting in there for a sack. Jalen Phillips was getting pressures, but wasn't getting home, but he was at least pressuring Jared Goff, which is nice. And we weren't getting as many penalties in the second half on defense, so we weren't shooting ourselves in the foot and making it easier on Detroit. That was also a really huge deal. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and I will commend the coaching staff and the defensive players for really stepping up and fixing their mistakes, adjusting on the fly, and just getting it done in the second half. I do applaud them for that. But we need to do better than that from jump, because if we let Buffalo get going on our defense like that, we're gonna have a long day trying to rein them back in. I understand plays are gonna happen, but we cannot shoot ourselves in the foot that much. Specific players, like I said, Zach Sealer had a great game. He had the sack and he had a pass deflection. He was really good in the run. Javon Holland, 12 tackles total. He was playing out of his mind. Kader Kohou played well. Jerome Baker did decent. Raekwon Davis made some good plays. Christian Wilkins was mostly just eating up blocks, but he did okay. Igbenogany was fine. Duke Riley looked better than a Landon Roberts at least. Just reading his keys and stuff. Even though Landon did have more tackles. But still. Yeah. I think that's pretty much all I had to cover. Yeah. Also, one thing I just want to kind of mention. I'm going to try to record the Bears film tomorrow. Scouting them because that is our next opponent. But like I said, right now, NFL Plus just doesn't seem to be working for me. I'm going to give it till tomorrow. If not, I'll probably do a very similar video to this, just kind of going over my thoughts on the Bears. Because I have looked at them already. I just haven't been able to record. Because that's where the issue was. And now NFL Plus isn't working at all. So, I don't know. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, I appreciate you hitting that like button. Have any questions or comments in the comments down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.